Hello again, everyone. This is Paul, and this video is brought to you thanks to a suggestion by none other than one of my subscribers. So, I don't know if he wants his identity publicly disclosed. I guess if he does, he'll just mention it in the comment section, but thank you very much, Mr. Currently Anonymous subscriber. I heard your request, and I'm doing it mere minutes after reading it. And one of the requests he gave was the pros and cons of being homeschooled. So, most of you already know that I was homeschooled during middle school and high school, but what you probably didn't know is that I wasn't always homeschooled. I actually did go to public school for a good 4 or 5 years of my childhood. And even though it was a rather different experience than most people's public schools, to give you just one example, we only got homework once a year, and also girls were considered the exception at my school. So while it wasn't technically an all-boys school, it ought to have been, because maybe there's like one girl in a classroom full of boys. Like, that's how rare they were at my school. But then it turned out that I was too academically advanced for their schooling system. So my mom ended up taking over homeschooling from there. It wasn't that easy. There was a lot of shouting and pleading, but eventually I ended up really liking the decision to be homeschooled because, okay, so first off, being homeschooled is a pretty simple definition. It just means I learned schooling in my house, and my mother was the one that taught me, and my brother was my only classmate. And all 3 of my siblings have been homeschooled before. In fact, I'm the only one in my entire family that actually went to school before I was homeschooled. Like, the rest of them were homeschooled all of their lives. And no, the homeschooling group my 2 youngest went to doesn't count. So basically, we were able to learn at our own pace. So if I was really struggling in one particular subject, my mom didn't try to force me to be good at it. She'd say, okay, well, if you're having struggles, I'll help you out. Also, we did have homework, but if we were having trouble with our homework, we could just say, hey, Mom, I didn't quite understand this question you gave me. Could you help me out here? And she would. And she also did a grading system that was understandable. Because I've never understood all this, like, C+, A- kind of nonsense. So she would say stuff like very good, excellent, or even perfect in some cases. Words I can understand a lot better than that. In addition, my mom didn't necessarily want us to be academically smart, but she wanted us to take what's called the moral high ground. She did not want us to forget our identity as Catholics. And above all, she wanted us to be, in the case of my brothers and myself, grammar was my best subject in school. She wanted my brothers and myself to be proper gentlemen, and in the case of my sister, a proper lady. So we were taught stuff like how to dress modestly, how to respect elders, how to actually talk to adults. Yeah, when I was in high school, I actually enjoyed talking to adults more than I did fellow teenagers. How to be respectful. Even because I've always kind of had an inferiority complex, so even like, I don't care if it pains you to open the door for a girl. Do it, because that's proper. And it turns out that most girls really like it, so it was a good payoff. Even if they don't want to admit it, deep down inside, girls, you know you like it when guys hold open a door. Don't try to hide it from me. So, the cons of being homeschooled. I know we get teased a lot, and even though I'm the type of guy that doesn't really, I'm not really affected by peer pressure, like, at all. The only time I'm ever affected by peer pressure is if the peers are pressuring me to really fulfill my baptismal calling. If they say stuff like, get a haircut, you hippie, I'll be like, so? Or if they say stuff like, what a dorky shirt you're wearing, I'll be like, so? To me, being proper gentleman, modest, and an upstanding member of society to the best of my ability and my sinful nature, are more important than being popular with the crowds. And that leads into the con, is that we're often branded as being socially awkward. And maybe to an extent that's kind of true, but on the other hand, it kind of isn't. And that's because we homeschoolers tend to talk in kind of a Victorian era kind of way. Kind of. I mean, I did grow up in Detroit, so I do have a little bit of a slangy tone to my voice, but suffice to say that social awkwardness sometimes turns people off a bit, because maybe they might expect someone like me to be a bit more trendy, and I'm not. I've always been a nonconformist for as long as I can remember, and I will not compromise those standards. But then again, social awkwardness, sometimes we don't exactly get all this mainstream stuff. A lot of time I have to ask people like, wait, who's that singer you were talking about? Or they might have terminology that I'm unfamiliar with. Like, I remember there was a video once that was made by a fellow homeschooled that was saying like the stereotypes of every homeschooled person, and he said, for some odd reason, homeschooled people have a lot of trouble saying certain words. Like, apparently we have trouble saying the word gay, which for a while I did fit that stereotype. I didn't like saying that word. I didn't like saying the words for like stuff that happens during puberty and adolescence. I didn't really like talking about body parts, stuff like that. But the reason for that, as strange as it may seem to you guys, is that we were taught that the human body, and admittedly it took me several years to make this a cohesive decision because I was kind of squeamish back then, that the human body was something beautiful and sacred, and because it was sacred, you didn't want to just flagrantly abuse certain terms. Like, you always wanted to treat it as this is one of God's special creations. When God created the world, he said it was good when he created everything else. And then when he created mankind, he said it is very good. You can also tell that I was homeschooled because I refused to submit to political correctness. I am going to say mankind. Mankind! Whether you guys like it or not. So, another con to being homeschooled is that I wasn't always a fan of only being able to take the subjects that my mother could do. Because, like, I always wanted to get into chemistry, and I never did, because my mom didn't know how to teach chemistry. And even when I went to public school, they just didn't have chemistry classes, and that always kind of bummed me out, especially when nowadays I play games like Zero Escape, and there was one puzzle that had me stumped for eons where it had to do with the pH scale, and I was like, what the heck? I never learned about this in school. I can't really think of too many cons to being homeschooled. I loved it so much. I quite honestly can't think of a single reason why I'd want to go to public school. I mean, from all that I've heard, it just seems like public schools essentially can take the most innocent of kids and then turn them into disasters. Now, before you go harping on me and saying, well, Paul, I went to public school and I was a decent person, it's a generalization. I use generalizations a lot. Kind of like how in my Myers-Briggs videos I say that most males turn out to be thinking types. Well, most homeschoolers turn out to be both academically smarter and they're also politer as a general rule of thumb. Now, I've met some lousy homeschoolers here and there, but generally speaking, my experiences with homeschoolers have always been much more positive than negative. Another pro coming from that is homeschoolers typically have a greater need for modesty than others. And again, there are obviously exceptions to this, but from what I've seen, even the most upstanding members of the Catholic community that really, really, really try to be their best at being a model Catholic still slip up in what should be common sense and what's modest and what's not, both guys and girls. But yet, with homeschoolers, it seems like I almost never run into that problem. Usually the homeschoolers are the ones that'll, like, wear dresses down to their feet. You know, my sister often wears, like, jeans or, like, a skirt. You know, stuff that people might expect someone of her age to maybe dress more trendy or wear more tank tops. My sister's just like, I don't need all that attention. And as for myself, I always wear pants and a t-shirt with sleeves. And some guys are a bit more at ease with displaying their body. I say, wait until the proper time. There's a time and a place for showing off your body, and right now is not that time. So this video's gone a bit over 10 minutes, so I think I'll leave it at that for maximum memory retention. But those are some of my experiences with homeschooling. If I didn't cover something, or if you still have questions, that's what the comments sections are for. And until my next video, keep the faith, stay epic, and God bless.